Hello! Today I'm going to do something a little bit different for me, and I get asked a lot about art journaling, sort of how I got started, what I like to do, why I do it, how I do it, and the answer is I art journal over the years for lots of different reasons, and the way I journal has changed since I began. So today is going to be like a huge journal flip of all the things that I could find, going right back to where I started to where I am now. And in amongst all these journals, there are things that I love, there are things that I hate, there are things that I wish that I'd done differently, there's things that I could improve. And occasionally if I get a page or a spread that I don't like, I do go over it. And sometimes I just leave it there because I think it is important to be able to look back and see how far you've come. So, some of the things that I'm sharing today are things that I wouldn't normally share because I'd think, oh, well, they're not really up to standard. It's not the sort of thing that I would generally share with other people. But I do think it's important for people to see that, yes, I do share things that are nicely finished, but we all have points in our creative journey where we weren't that good and we were still practicing and we were still trying out different things, and some things worked and some things didn't work. And it's important to see that everybody has good and bad pages. So as you can see, I have a huge selection of different journals here, different brands, different sizes, different shapes. And the interesting thing to note is really, as I've gone on, I'm getting smaller and smaller. And currently my two favourite things are these two very small journals. And when I started with this huge Strathmore journal that is under the pile here at the right. So I'm just going to move these out of the way, and I'm going to try and sort of flip through these in order from the earliest through to the most current, although there are overlaps in between these different books, and I've worked in various different books at the same time. But generally speaking, I'm going to try and do this reasonably in a chronological order so you can sort of see where I've come from. So this was the first journal that I bought, and this is a Strathmore visual mixed media journal, and it's something like 12 by 14 inches. It is huge, big hard-backed thing. Still not completely finished, few pages left. When I started, I believed it was like, go big or go home, and I went for this size thinking I need all this space for mixed media work. And in some instances, yes, but generally I found it quite difficult. These are large pages to cover and to fill, and when you're actually starting off, you may find it easier to start off with something slightly smaller. That being said, the paper in here is really good mixed media paper, and I quite often just tear pages out with it being spiral bound and just use it elsewhere as a quality mixed media paper. When I began journaling, I was using a lot of digistamps, and a lot of what you will see in some of these journals earlier on will be digistamps. And I would experiment with sort of sprays and stencils and different sort of ideas, different products. There was no real sort of purpose to what I was doing. I was just wanting to try absolutely everything. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. Certain things that I really liked, colours and other things that I just think, it just turned into an absolute mess. But it was one of those things where I would keep persevering. I wanted to become better, and art journaling is something that you don't have to share with other people. If you play in that book and then want to close that book and it's just for your eyes only, well then that's absolutely fine. I mean, there are certain things that never really got finished. This I think I was intending to do more to and never did. And sometimes I was, here I think I was just experimenting with textures and things like that. Quite a few of these are things that I've actually glued in. I've done them on loose pages and glued them into the journal. And there's like everything was different. Sometimes I'm following prompts. I mean, there are Facebook groups and on online prompts. And sometimes I was just like making things up and just seeing what happened. I very rarely do any actual journaling. You know, I don't write my deepest desires on my journal pages. It's more about the art for me than that. And mainly I just enjoy playing with colours and shapes and just trying out different techniques. I mean, here, these are all things that I've just stuck in, a couple of separate loose pages here, and I'm using it almost as a scrapbook at this point because the format of this is just too big, just way too big for me. And even here, a couple of things that are yet to be sort of stuck in. No doubt I shall find somewhere to put those, but still some pages to go. And that was the very first journal that I bought. Now, having decided that that really was a bit too big, I got a Moleskine, and this is like your sort of standard size. And I actually really liked this format. Because I tend to use a mixture of markers or paints, generally speaking, I stick 2 pages together because obviously that markers bleed through really badly. And this I sort of started many, many years ago and finished sometime last year. I sort of put it away for a while, didn't do any journaling, and then I came back to it. I loved this. I made a real effort to do something really good at the beginning. Absolutely hated the next page that I did there, but I've left it there. You know, it's just the way. I don't want to hide my progress, so I've left it there. And then I started to look more at using paint and stamping and collage, and just trying out lots of different techniques. But at this point, I was much preferring this size to the Strathmore, which was just too big. And again, lots of digi-stamps here, inked backgrounds, stenciled backgrounds, trying my hand at a bit of lettering, just having a lot of fun, making a change from making cards, because a lot of crafters will sit and they make cards and you get a whole bunch of cards and nobody to send to. So just to put stuff into an art journal was really, really nice. And again, sort of trying different, but I think this is when I had some gelatos and I thought, oh, I want to try those, some bits of washi tape. And, you know, just experimenting with lots of different things. Didn't particularly like this texture paste here, just, I don't know, didn't seem to work very well. Didn't like the colours on that one. This I remember I'd just read Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, something like that, and that inspired me to do that spread. I know some of these pages were based on prompts from, I believe, the Joggles Art Adventure group. And I was starting to try my hand at some drawing, some, you know, original artwork, as well as using the digi-stamps. And that was the way that I kind of wanted to go then. You know, I was getting a bit more pleasure from being creative, using my own imagination. But still, you know, had a love of digi-stamps, a way of using up gel print backgrounds and things like that. Again, here, these gel prints collaged in. Using mixtures here of digi-stamps and then my own artwork in the background. And just really, really enjoying this size. Absolutely loved this size of journal. And was really excited to actually get to the end completely to the end of this journal. Filled it up right to the very back cover. So at that point, I decided to get a couple more journals. And because I'd enjoyed the Moleskine so much, I got this journal, which was a very similar size. It's not exactly the same, but it's close. And then I bought this one, which is the Dina Wakley journal, simply because I wanted to try all the different surfaces that she'd got inside it. It's got lots of different kinds of paper in. And I have a love-hate relationship with this journal, simply because of the different types of surfaces. And sometimes things work and sometimes they don't, and I find the fabrics difficult. I even find the watercolour paper difficult at times. But it's a nice size. It's not as huge as the Strathmore. It's more manageable than that. But it's a little bit bigger than the standard journals that I'm using. And sometimes, as I say, you just need something with a bit more space. So, you know, I've got things where I've started and abandoned a page. I've got completed pages. I do really like the craft cardstock that's in here. That's nice. And it's all really sturdy and good for painting and collage and things like that. So I am sort of struggling with it, but sort of persevering and trying to find different ways of using these different types of surface that's in here. I'm not sure whether I would buy another one. It's not really suiting the style, the direction that I'm going in now, but I'm definitely going to sort of get to the end of this. I will continue to work in it until it's full. And then at that point, I think I'll sort of say, well, been there, done that, and I probably won't get another one. I know she's brought these out in different sizes, but it's not really, I don't know, I don't find it so easy to work in as other things. And as you say, still got a fair bit left to use in there, but I will persevere with that and I will get to the end at some point. So in the meantime, I'd got another smaller journal and I'd been doing some loose pages as well. So I bought this, basically just a little scrapbook, an 8x8 inch scrapbook. And if I've got any loose pages now, I tend to just stick them in here. Sometimes I just find it easier. If I'm following prompts especially, I might be sat downstairs with a few bits and pieces and just following an online prompt, and I find it easier to work just on a piece of paper or a piece of cardstock, and then I fix it into this scrapbook when I've finished. And I think it's quite a simple way to work, and sometimes gives you the opportunity to use other products which might not be so easy if you were working directly in a journal. So I shall just continue using this to compile bits and pieces that don't really belong anywhere else, and say probably I'm about half of the way through that at the moment. Let's just move all of these out of the way. So, as I said, I'd got this book, and then I did actually have a couple of small, this is just a sketchbook, and this is a book that I've made myself, just using a hardback book cover, as I joined in a couple of monthly drawing challenges, as it were. Last October I joined in with the Whimsy prompts and decided I just wanted to work in a sketchbook. I wanted to use markers, so I was just going to get a cheap sketchbook, and I followed the daily prompts actually for the whole of October, just working my way through this, only working on one side because the markers were just showing through, but I wasn't too bothered. I didn't want too much pressure. It was, you know, a whole month challenge. And sometimes, you know, if you set your expectations too high, it can be so easily to be defeated during a challenge. So I was just like, you know what, I'm going to keep it really simple. I'm not going to be too fussed about the book. I'm not going to be too fussed about the highly detailed drawings. You know, I'm just going to follow the prompts as best I can each day. And some days I much preferred what I did to other days. But it's just, I had great fun and a great satisfaction at the end of the month when I'd actually finished all 31 of the prompts, which is, you know, it is quite tricky. Even if you're only spending sort of 15, 20 minutes, half an hour a day, to find that time every day is tricky for a whole month. But I worked my way steadily through, set aside a little bit of time each evening to do what I'd got to do. And I felt that, you know, my drawing skills had improved at the end of the month. I'd got a lot more enjoyment from my own drawing. And so that was just a basic little sketchbook. I needed some extra pages. So I just used some elastic to add in some extra pages in the middle in a sort of traveller's notebook style way. And that just made it big enough. So then this year I started on this journal, and this has seen really the most progress, I think, in my artwork. I started this journal at the beginning of the year, and then early on in the year I took an online illustration course, and I'll pop the link to that in the description below. And by doing that course, I saw huge improvements in my own artwork, and then so much more satisfaction. And this sort of snowballed into just wanting to draw more, to use watercolors, to do so much more, and to have the belief that you can do it and get really good results. Well, in my eyes, I'm so happy with the progress that I've got. So the pages in here, they're not in chronological order. I tend to sort of now just open the journal and start at one place and work backwards and forwards. But, I love this style of drawing, just using graphite pencils. Here I've added a little bit of colour, but really, really love this style. And here using watercolours, these are like shimmery watercolours, absolutely love it. Practicing facial expressions, this was part of the course that I took. So again, there's a lot of progress pieces in here from this course. This page here, I covered up something I really didn't like. It was a line drawing that I never completed, so I literally collaged over the top of it, used some paint pens. I think this was the very first thing I did in here. I had some watercolours at Christmas, and I just sort of was swatching out some of the colours to make a background on here. And this was the last thing that I drew before I actually took the illustration course. And even though I don't like these pages now, because I feel I could do it so much better, that's the benchmark. That's where I started, and where I am now. It shows the progress that I made, and I'm keeping them there for that reason. So there's lots of drawing, lots of watercolour, shading, playing with different media, and just this is what I want out of an art journal now. This, illustration. This is the direction that I want to go with it. And I think round about this point was when I then started using this, which was for the Mermaid challenge this year. Now, Mermaid had a prompt every day for the whole of May. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that, not in the way that I wanted to. I wanted to watercolour and sort of do something way more sort of complicated than the basic illustration that I did for the Whimsy Ween. So I chose 14 prompts out of the list, and decided that was what I was going to do. I was sort of going to do half of it, and that gave me a little bit more time. And this was a book cover I'd saved. It's like a velvet book cover, and it was black, and I put bleach on it and paint and sprays and made it all look sort of like it had been under the sea. And that became my cover. And I illustrated 14 different prompts from the official Mermaid list. And I loved every minute of it. Really, really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed using the paint. And enjoyed being able to spend that little bit more time doing the challenge without the pressures of doing a daily prompt. And that's my advice to anyone who thinks they might want to try one of these drawing challenges, monthly or longer challenges. You know, you don't have to do every single one if you don't want to. If you think that by signing up to do every one you're going to fail, well, don't. Set yourself that you're going to do 5, you're going to do 10, and stick to that. Do something that's manageable for you. We've all got different amounts of free time. We all take different times to do things, so you know it's supposed to be fun, and if you're going to take part, then enjoy it. And I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed doing the 14 prompts that I did. And I don't think I could have done all of them. I genuinely do not think that I could have done all of them. So once I'd sort of got that out of the way, I went back to my other art journal, this one, and I started doing these spreads with markers, with Copic markers and Pro markers, and just, you know, really enjoyed using the colour and just drawing and illustrating. My confidence with watercolour was really coming along, and I really like to flip through this one. You know, I really do get joy from seeing all the different styles of page that I've done in here. These are part of an Instagram sort of prompt. There is a hashtag with a draw this in your own style, and various people will put up a picture of their own original artwork, and you are challenged to draw their artwork but in your own style, and both of these are part of that. And again, I find that's really useful if you're not sure what to draw. You know, there's a picture there for you to sort of copy in for all intents and purpose, but to put your own twist on it, to make it your own, and I really do enjoy that. Here is back to Beetlejuice again, like we'd got in the other journal. Really enjoyed this, picking up elements and themes from the film, quotes. Had a lot of fun doing that. Also a lot of fun with this Alice in Wonderland inspired spread. And again, back to the pencil again. This one, Edward Scissorhands, really enjoyed that. I like the little leaf borders that I'd done there. This was based on a travel journaling sort of lesson. I'd been to Bristol and we'd looked for Banksy's artworks. So a little bit about our day written there, hidden journaling. Totally different to everything else, but it just fitted nicely. What I wanted to do, it fitted in this book with this format. And, you know, another painting there, a sketch there. And this book nearly finished now, not long. That'll be sort of finished within a few weeks, I would have thought. So down to the smallest two. This one I bought. I was interested to try a small square journal. This is 5.5 inches square. And I wanted to have something like this because I liked the landscape effect that I was going to get from a double page spread. So most of, I think, what is in here is based on prompts from James Burke's Patreon. There's been some tutorials and suggestions, and I'm gradually working through that at the moment. So this was some modern Kakashi dolls, which I really enjoyed doing the line work and the patterning, and then I had a go at doing the same thing but with collage. This is part collage, part my own work. It's sort of 50-50. A lot of fun again. More of the Kakashi dolls, but in a mid-century modern style. Just trying out different ideas, different designs. Again, this was based on one of the videos in Patreon. Would all make perfect sense if you'd watched the video. And we've got some, you know, washi tape and collage here. Again, this is such a nice format. This, again, part of a Patreon, this was a suggestion to make up a story, and, you know, sort of like a crazy story, which I did, and I've illustrated it. But that's as far as I've got so far in that book. It's a relatively new one. I only started that at the beginning of this month. And last will be this little tiny book. I bought this a couple of years ago. Never used it because it was too small and the paper was too thin. But then I watched a video which basically suggested just slapping some paint and ink and just randomly putting colour on pages throughout the journal so that you could just pick it up and use it. And, you know, that it was great advice. And so I've put some collage on certain pages. I've doodled on certain pages. Again, written quotes, a bit of collage. Just generally dotting backwards and forwards through this book. Just, it's so nice having the colour down to start with, you know, literally 30 minutes with a pair of scissors and a glue stick, and you've got a little piece of artwork. So again, I'm sticking 2 pages together where possible because this is really very thin paper. But it was never going to get used if I didn't do this. And now I'm using it. I'm having fun playing in it. If I've only got a small amount of time, this is the one that I just pick up and just get creative for sort of 15 minutes, 30 minutes. And you've had the satisfaction of having a little bit of play. So I hope that you may have found that interesting, informative, maybe given you some ideas on what you might like to try or what you might not like to try. I would definitely suggest, if you're unsure, then do not start too big. Having a huge blank page can be quite off-putting. This size, which is sort of UK A5 size, it also say standard Moleskine journal size, I find that really good to use. You know, a single page is a nice size, a double page isn't too big. That's my preferred one. If you want to try smaller than that, this square one has been great fun. This is Sea White of Brighton. It's a British company. I'm not sure whether they sell these overseas or not. But if you want to try something big, Strathmore, absolutely brilliant. The paper's really good for mixed media, but I just find that whole size too big. They do a smaller one. I'm sure they do like a 5 by 7 inch one as well, which is about, you know, this sort of size. But really, you know, there's no excuse not to have a go. There's lots of different types of journal. If you don't want to buy a journal, just take a sketchbook, just make one out of, this is just some watercolour paper, you know, and some elastic and a book cover. But the important thing is just to have fun, not be afraid to make mistakes, and just enjoy yourself. So as always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave me a thumbs up. Please feel free to leave some comments. I do always like to see what people have got to say. If you've got any suggestions or your experience of art journaling, I'd love to hear it. And I shall be back again next week with another video. But for now, that's all. Bye.